We're back for another exciting episode at Collins and Collins with a delightful guest who we have not heard from for a bit. And of course, you can subscribe to the Patreon for extended episodes and bonus content. My name is Ashley Clements.
And my name is Margaret Dunlap.
And you're watching the Look Back Diaries. That makes it sound like it's like a 90s sitcom.
It kind of does, but I am of an age that I appreciate a good 90s sitcom.
Likewise, some of the viewers were not born until this century. Look, actually, honestly, I should be grateful that I appealed to the youths.
Well, and you and I had to spend our lives being told that we were born after the golden age of movies and filmmaking in Hollywood. So, yeah. Look at how heartbroken we are over this. And honestly, I think people can probably get along quite well without 90s sitcoms, as delightful as many of them were at the time.
Yeah, not everything holds up, as well as the Lizzie Bennet Diary. Smooth transition. You will, of course, remember writer Margaret Dunlap, also one of our co-executive producers. In the world of TV, writers are producers, and that's one of the fancier names.
That's me. Wicked fancy.
Of course, we all, in our very fancy capacity on this extremely fancy show, wore 11 hats. So...
often not quite as literally as you did on this show, but...
I mean, how many hats did I actually wear? Darcy hat, Mr. Bennett hat, Mama Bennett hat.
Mrs. Bennett hat.
Well, and then, it's going to be a while before we get to it. I did do the purple hat for Charlotte in episode 94. And then, yes, I guess in the words of Caroline, this is so a hat.
So a hat.
So... the reflector, Jane's a flower. So head pieces, yes, but metaphorical hats as well abound. Just being tossed into the air, Mary Tyler Moore style. Oh God, none of them are going to get that reference.
When your shot only goes to here on your cast, the ways to do costume changes are pretty much limited to things to put on your head.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could count the number of times that my shoes make it in, and I had to think about it when they did. So, because also the first time that my shoes ever made it in, I didn't think you could see my feet. I was just wearing flip-flops, and it didn't really make sense with the rest of what was going on.
Well,
and from then on, I was
you were already sitting down, and there wasn't...
Well, it was in the first batch of episodes, so I didn't really understand that when I left the room, feet would be involved. Yes.
Would be involved. It's true.
So here we are in a place where I would always be wearing shoes because it's an office. We are at Collins and Collins. I have come at the invitation of Charlotte, who was not in the last month of the Lizzie Bennet Diaries because we were in a fight. She was off starting this new job, but she was appearing on one of our spin-offs, the second spin-off that we did, which was helmed by you. And would you like to talk a little bit about Maria of the Loo?
Yeah, Maria of the Loo, which was sort of we had that whole month with no Lydia.
Right.
And we didn't want Lydia to be off camera that whole time. And so we gave Lydia a vlog, and Rachel wrote a bunch of amazing episodes chronicling those adventures, which definitely factored into how we would do Lydia's storylines later on, because all of a sudden she's definitely a POV character, which she never is in the novel. I'm sure somebody's going to be like, actually, I'm like, okay, but she is very rarely, if at all, in the novel. I will stand by. But so with Lizzie and Charlotte, they've had this sort of falling out over how could you sell out and take this job? And Charlotte's like, I like eating, and this is a job that I would like to have. Thank you very much. So there's been the falling out, and we kind of wanted to show the path that both of those characters were going to take towards that eventual reconciliation. And
we now set up the precedent, as you were saying, that people don't appear and we still get to follow what they're doing.
And I've been a public Charlotte partisan for some time. Even before the show, I was always like, no, Charlotte, she gets a raw deal, but she does really good things in that story.
She makes a very understandable, smart decision, honestly. She makes a business calculation that is best for her and her family, which is exactly what our Charlotte does.
Yeah, yeah, it was that was one of the very easy updates of turning that marriage proposal into a job because really in the book, Collins, he is
It was
offering her
always
the
a
job of
business
be my
contract.
domestic engineer for the rest of your life, and she accepts it. So,
Well, and historically, like, marriage was a business
yeah,
contract.
it's a
The origins
financial
were not,
agreement.
we fell in love and we wanted to sign paperwork about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's either an agreement between families or an agreement between individuals, and so we wanted to, like we said, we had the precedent and we wanted to show Charlotte's point of view as well of like, how was she feeling about all of this and how did she eventually come back around through the machinations of her little sister, Maria, played by Janice Lee, who was just delightful in the very limited role that she had on our show, but she was completely sweet.
She's the only character in the Lizzie Bennet universe who never appeared on the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and therefore, like, I never worked with her. The only one.
You'd like see her at the rap party and be like, oh my God, there was a cast
Yeah.
member who I didn't meet.
And as I recall, the reason that that device was designed was because it didn't make sense that Charlotte necessarily would just start vlogging herself.
Yeah, yeah, there was the thing of like Charlotte like has chosen to be kind of behind the scenes on your vlog, and so it's like it wasn't the fight where she's like saying, "Well, I'll show you. I'm going to have my own vlog." So it was like it was definitely sort of a little bit of the narrative stretch device, but it's also kind of like the buy-in that we did ask for our audience is like you do have to buy in at a certain point that these characters they all just decide to put their lives online because if they don't then you don't have a show to watch. So it's like
I mean, and that it always comes back to that, right? Like, and it's funny because sometimes in the comments, people will be like, well, but isn't Lizzie kind of a bad person for putting this online? And I'm like, are you mad that you saw it? Aren't, I mean, like, but yes, and we do kind of blur those lines and we ask those
okay.
questions and, kind of factors into why we, end the show, that why Lizzie decides to end the show.
Mhm.
But yes, like it's fiction is also the kind of always the answer. But it does also hearken to, there's so many things as I rewatch the show that really do make this kind of like a time capsule of the 2012 YouTube culture.
Mhm.
But when you think about things like, Live Journal and, things that even sort of predate the YouTubeification of it all, that like the internet showed up and people were just sort of experimentally being like, what if I shared way too much personal
The
information
internet was
on
highly
here?
confessional for a very long time in the span of these things, but yeah, and I think also it was a fun way. Maria kind of got to be a stand-in for the audience a little bit of like she wanted
Hmm.
these two friends to get back together, and so hopefully she is being a bit of that proxy of being, it's like trying to manipulate them into seeing, to reconciling this breach because Lizzie and Charlotte should be friends. That is their resting state is the two of them are besties.
And as the little sister, like you would have, Lizzie would have been a big part of Maria's life as
For
well.
sure.
Like it would have been weird for, it's like, what do you mean you're not speaking?
Yeah. Like
That's not right.
she's
And you gave her, as I recall, a lot of your own fandoms, a lot of your own like things that you love. You gave Maria.
yeah, yeah, she could be a bit of a nerd about things.
Why don't we go ahead and take a look back at this episode?
Yay.
Yay!
I'm still here at Collins and Collins and having a great time with Charlotte. I seriously had no idea how much I needed a break from home until I got here. Not that I
This
don't
was the
love
phase
my family,
in which I was
but
trying really hard to look professional, but that means I'm wearing a blazer that like is
you know,
and it doesn't fit. It doesn't, but that's also appropriate for Lizzie, right? Like she wouldn't have business clothes, so maybe she borrowed something to try to look
at a life.
professional.
Jane probably like
I have
stole a
advanced
sample
above
size
my
or something
Lizzie
from
Bennet,
work for
and
you.
I can't believe
Yeah,
I'm
or this is like my
sharing a
mom's
proposal
old
from Ricky
blazer. Who
Collins.
knows? I realize also like you also wrote the last episode, which was the reuniting Lizzie and Charlotte. You wrote like the beginning and the end of the 2-month Collins and Collins arc. So we'll have you take a look at both of them.
I'm already using
Look,
the diaries
there's-
for my thesis.
And here we are coming up with a convoluted plan to keep me here.
Write up a report and analysis on each.
There are times in this where I'm like, could college have possibly worked, or grad school have possibly worked that way? And it's like, it doesn't matter. Frankly, it doesn't matter. But also, I guess we can definitely assume that Lizzie's fake school is on a quarter system, because here we are in the beginning of October and she's not back at school yet. I don't know.
Yeah, apparently there was definitely, everyone got to be as low residency as they needed to be, even in this era.
Different grad programs work in different ways. And this one obviously worked very independent study.
Yeah, I think we sort of figured at this point was probably mostly just working on her master's thesis and could kind of be around
it works.
campus
It works.
light.
That is an interesting little reference there to like George has a serious girlfriend. We never come back to who that may have been. It's just a kind of random. I'm just like, he's busy. I think that was maybe intentionally to start fan buzz of like, is it Lydia? But it's not yet.
No, it's not.
Oh, look, I brought my clothes.
Oh, Elizabeth, how are you doing on your own? Are you coming home yet?
Actually, Mom, I was going to stay up here with Charlotte.
So funny to like
Mr. Collins left his fiancée.
even have a landline phone.
No.
But obviously they do in offices, and
Yeah.
No.
that prop was just there.
Then why are you calling me?
What was all that?
It's nice to still be able to laugh at one's own jokes.
Maybe.
True.
Excuse me. I have to go make
You can tell I haven't rewatched this one because I'm like, oh, I'm amused. I have to go make some phone calls.
They realize I'm gonna.
We're gonna leave you here. Hold the
half a dozen
phone.
phone calls,
Literally.
3 faxes, and 2 Xanax later. The Xanax
A lot of Xanax jokes in this show.
I put together
Oh,
4
this
independent
is,
studies
but this
plus
is
my
an Ingerbert Humperdinck,
That's my last
Oh.
bit.
semester at grad school. Now all I need to do is
right? I think so.
the work.
About the
4
Xanax.
independent studies,
I know.
plus my thesis
So
project.
much work. Don't worry, you don't really have to do it because you're fictional. It's gonna be okay.
Charlotte, do we have any Xanax? Just kidding.
Just kidding. No, I'm not. Yes, I
No,
am.
you're not. This was it's the Engelbert Humperdinck joke, basically.
I think we actually did it twice with her.
We might have.
But
We did a lot of episodes. It was sometimes hard to remember what I had thought about putting in the show and what had actually gone into the show.
yes, that is a moment where that was literally your direction, which was just an very specific reference to an old at this point. Ugh, pains me to say that, but like I used to watch it in high school.
Eddie Izzard bit.
And I don't think it was like brand new then, but Eddie Izzard special, who is simply the best. So
Yeah, it was.
that's who we steal
But
from.
fortunately, you got the reference because I think we were
Oh,
there, and it might have been a rehearsal, and Bernie was like, "What's the thing?" You're like, "No, I know exactly what she means. We've got
I
this."
know what this
Yeah.
is. I know this bit in my bones.
Our mind meld was working well for that one. Yeah, and I guess we did explain by the end how are we justifying. It's like, yeah, just do a lot of independent studies and your thesis, which is pretty much what my senior year of undergraduate looked like. I went.
So you had familiarity with the idea of kind of like, I get to make up my own school, and maybe that influenced Lizzie also getting to make up her own school.
I think definitely my own DIY education for sure influenced the. It's like, yeah, we can throw this explanation together. That makes sense.
And that makes it, in a way, kind of like a great example of a Margaret episode, because here we have this like connective tissue. We have needing to kind of justify and explain something that's complicated, but also like make it entertaining and funny. Like we both laughed at this, and like we made it.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah, no, it was looking at this one. I am going. It's like, wow, there's a lot of logistics and connective tissue that this episode is basically just there to explaining what we're gonna do. Yeah.
I make fun and poke at holes where I'm like, I mean, does that seem realistic? But also, like, it doesn't matter. You wanted to hear the story of the Bennetts and Lizzie and Darcy and all the other stories that we kind of interwove into it. So just be quiet and enjoy.
I remember when we
Don't
were
pull
leading
the
up to the
thread.
reveal that Bing
Bing was not in medical
was
school.
not in medical school anymore, which was also somewhat based.
That was the biggest thing that people were like, it doesn't make sense. That's not how med school
Yeah.
works. And I was like, well,
Well,
fine.
and in the lead up, we had Lizzie in an episode say, it's like, when is this guy ever in classes? And someone in the comments is like, you can't just, hang a lantern on that and pretend it's okay. It's like, no, we're actually leading up to her.
We're actually doing something. Yeah, we eventually get to the reveal, but it was very funny that the comments were hammering about it for so long. But that was really the one thing that they were like, this doesn't make sense. No one was like, I don't understand her independent studies. So we buy that. And we'll celebrate it. Lizzie made up school. I don't know what the work that she actually did was because, nobody did it.
On the vlog.
Let's take a look at the
All
comments and see what they thought of this episode. Kay Cranberry says, the best part of this entire video is how Lizzie walks out of the room to make the phone calls, still wearing the costume theater hat and shawl. I remember us being a little amused by that at the time too, that she was just like, I don't care.
It's like sort of like your power costume to talk to your mother. You're trying to channel her power by wearing that hat.
Yes, I equally match you. Juliana Pimentel says, according to Lydia, he has a serious girlfriend now. Well, I suppose Lydia would be the first to know. So yeah, I think we did kind of successfully plant that seed, even though that's not what's going on.
I don't remember if the timeline worked out that was actually Gigi.
It doesn't. So whoever that is we don't actually know. What we get from that is, first of all, that Lydia is still in contact with George, which is significant. But no, whoever that girl is not in our universe. And we also get the idea that George moves on very quickly from people. Like, how serious could he be with someone he just met?
He's very intense.
Yeah. Gina Martin says, I love any episode where Lizzie pretends to be her mother. It's one of my favorite parts of the series. I think that you and I would both agree on that as well.
It is a delight. Lizzie's mother, in part inspired by the grandmother of one of my coworkers on a show one time, actually. I told her that, and she watched the video, and she's like, yes, that is great. So I was able to channel the spirit of very Louisiana grandmother.
That's hilarious. A. McFrost says, Dr. Gardner, like her aunt and Uncle Gardner. Great parallelism. Here, Dr. Gardner has allowed Lizzie to stay at Charlotte's. This all makes sense considering their role in the book. I'm just wondering if we'll see more of him/her. No, probably not. Well, we'll hear more about her. Is this the first time we mentioned Dr. Gardner? Is this the invention of hey, there's a... We're still going to use this very popular, important character in a
bit
way.
In a bit reference. It might be, especially because it is that sort of that story mechanic of the Gardners let this happen originally.
Right, because this is when they show up in the book too. And the Gardners took Jane to London during this time period. So her took Collins and Collins. To Mr. Collins and Charlotte's home. Is unrelated to the Gardners in this book, in Pride and Prejudice, but it will come back. They take her to the Lake District where she will run into Darcy, and they are an important mechanism in our source material. So it's fun to find a way. And when we need names for people, we have a great place to look.
I'm not positive this was the first reference, but that is absolutely the sort of thing of here, there's a bit person, they're having an impact on the plot, or we need a character to mention. We would always try to pull from the books if we possibly could.
A lot of this is about how funny it is that Lizzie leaves in the costume, and then Gloria Steckelberg says, are you engaged? Is Jane engaged? Then why are you calling me? Haha, I loved that. I just like that she highlighted it because it's what made us laugh ourselves. Because we made it funny, and it was very fun to make the funnies with you and to look back at them. Thanks so much for joining me for another
Thanks so much for
episode.
having me. It's a joy to chat with you and rewatch the episode as always. And I did look at the comments on some of the earlier episodes that aired, and people were so lovely. And so,
They loved you
even
as
though
a
I did not
guest.
respond, I want people to know I saw them and I was very touched.
Well, you clearly had a lot of very fun insight to offer, and we'll have more of your insights on future
Excellent.
episodes.